group work. Maybe we'll just do individual work. So what is urban design? It is the implementation of plans and policies, primarily focusing on the space between buildings, but it's not limited to just the space between buildings. It is a multidisciplinary process of shaping the physical setting for life. So the art of making places. You can make buildings. Most notably, in the Philippines, there is no such profession as urban designer. It's all fitting into like what we call the environmental planner, and they can work on several different scales as long as it's about kanang urban development or even kanang protecting natural areas. But I just want to highlight what is defined as urban in the Philippines is any barangay with a population of 5,000 or more. Also, it's there are like sort of other three definitions for urban in the Philippines. Again, number one is if a barangay has 5,000 or more people, and if a barangay has at least one establishment with a minimum of 100 employees. And then finally, if a barangay has five or more establishments, each having a minimum of 10 employees and five or more facilities within a 2 kilometer radius. So I don't know what they mean by facilities over here. But as you can see, it's all about having a certain number of people and having some economic activity within a specified boundary. In this case, it's the barangay. And for comparison, other countries have different definitions of what urban is. In the US, it's an area with 50,000 or more people. In Australia, it's they have what they call urban mesh blocks, but simply put, it could be it's defined by density, a population density greater or equal to 100 persons per square kilometer, or a population density greater or equal to 200 persons per square kilometer. So there are like sort of different ranges here. But I think the Philippines has a very kind of easy to follow definition. If your barangay has 5,000 or more, you will be classified as urban. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, that really depends on the barangay. So this is just a map showing what is urban and rural, or like what they would classify an urban country or a rural country based on a data from 2018. They made a map called urbanization. So this is a map showing 1953. You see America and Canada on the upper left. You see Australia on the lower right. So these are the quote unquote developed countries. So they were urban way before the Philippines was. So they're a lot older, a lot more developed. So most of the time you would see that the most developed countries are usually the older countries. And it's estimated by 2020, almost majority of the world will become urban. And in this map here, the Philippines is still majority rural. But by 2047, they estimated that the Philippines would be majority urban, meaning our urban areas will become grow larger and larger. So we really need urban designers and urban planners, whether you're in the MUP or MUD courses, landscape architecture, or major in architecture. We will need professionals who can sort of figure things out at a larger scale. And then in the Philippines, actually, according to the PSA sort of definition of urban populations, the Philippines is now 54% of urban. So 54% of the Philippine populations live in urban barangays. Remember, our definition earlier was 5,000 people. So more than half, or a little bit over than half of the Philippines, every barangay is classified urban. So as of like 2015, it was 51.2%. And as of 2020, it is now 54.0%, 54% exactly. So the estimates from the Our World and Data website turned out to be correct. So according to the Philippine definition of urban, 54% of barangays in the Philippines is now classified as urban. So let me just highlight the importance of kanang scale in defining what is or like showing why urbanization is such an important factor, but also why rural areas should be preserved. So it's not just about building up, building up, building up, but it's also balancing that development, because without natural resources, as we mentioned last week or like 2 weeks before, a city cannot survive. So let me just open up a quick scaled map here. So over here to the right, we have cities, the US cities, Australian cities, and Cebu. So I just focus on Cebu here. So Cebu province is about 208 kilometers long from end to end. And then sort of the province or like is one sort of political unit. So we have national scale, we have the regional unit, we have the provincial, and then we have the municipal, and then the barangay. Abroad, in the US, they have the federal, meaning the national unit. They have the 50 states. So over here is the state of New York. And Australia has something similar. They have over here, their country is divided into like 6 states. This is the state of New South Wales. So basically what I'm trying to say is the province is sort of like the equivalent to states abroad, but the size of, for example, one province like Cebu is really very small compared to the amount of land that's occupied by a single state in the US, or what do you call this, Australia. And we must not forget that why these like urban areas are so kind of developed is really because they have a lot of land to work with. So the urban area of New York, let me just like make this brighter, is just this part here in white, and the rural areas are everything else here. So this rural area, I think about more than 90% rural area of New York State, is supporting the growth of the urban area in New York. Meanwhile, in places like the Philippines, we don't have a lot of sort of land, but we need to maintain our rural areas in order to help support the growth of the urban areas. So our goal, the 54% earlier, is a bit worrying because we're losing sort of land to urbanization. So the goal as well for urban designers and urban planners is to like delineate and help limit or manage the growth of barangays and municipalities in the Philippines. Because if you look at the developed area or like the urban areas of other countries, you have here, this is basically the equivalent of, what do you call this? Um, the Greater Sydney area. I guess they're closer to, this is the issue, because like in the Philippines, we have regions, provinces, municipalities, and barangays. In other countries, they don't have such a sort of kanang kanang what's the word? Several political units. Here we have again the region, the province, the municipal and city, and then the barangay. So that's like 4 levels. In other countries, there's only 3. There's the national level, the state, and then the, what they call the municipal level, or the cities, or they have different names in different countries. So this here, technically it's called the Greater Sydney area. I guess it would fall more into like a metropolitan scale. But the Greater Sydney area is governed by several kanang, or is composed of smaller towns or cities. They're called, in Australia, they're called local government areas. And each of those local government areas have their own mayor, and they all function under the New South Wales state. But what I want to like hammer into you guys is that the urban area is really very, very small compared to the natural rural areas. And then over here we have New York City in New York State. And the urban area or the boundary is just this. And even with that, they have still a lot more of like rural areas outside the city. And then finally, comparing that with Cebu City over here, let's zoom in a bit. we really don't have a lot of kanang urban, so what you call this, rural areas left, or kanang we don't have a lot of rural areas to support the urban development. So if you look at the sort of proportion, this is New York City, and then the rural area to support New York City is almost like 90 times or 90% the boundary of New York State. Whereas in Cebu province, we just have that, which is kind of like a bit sort of similar, but our urban area is, what do you call this? Uh, Understandably way smaller than New York, because like we don't have enough rural areas. And then the issue here for places like Cebu is our urban development is encroaching into our sort of protected natural areas. So you see the white here. And then further, we have here the CBD of Kanang, Australia, Sydney. It's even smaller than Cebu City. So if you put them side by side like this, so basically the city of Sydney in Australia is kanang the most kanang developed, the most expensive, and you see the area is just a little bit smaller than, what do you call this? Just a little bit smaller than Lapu-Lapu even. So if I make this a bit more transparent, can I do that? Oh, no, I don't think it will work. But you can see that this shape here, I'll just draw it simply. You're like so. And I put that on top of Mactan, on top of Lapu-Lapu. You really don't need, what do you call this, a large area to become sort of highly urbanized or, excuse me, developed. So hopefully that's kanang clear. Any questions on that? Anyway, my point is that urbanization doesn't necessarily mean spreading out. It means actually becoming more concentrated so we can preserve all this natural resources over here. So it's going on in Australia, it's going on in New York, the US, and I'm sure several other countries in the world. And we need to sort of kanang remind ourselves that urbanization is not just about creating more and more buildings, but creating built up areas in a controlled and sort of dense manner so that we don't waste our natural resources. Because in the Philippines, our resources are very much limited compared to those like bigger developed countries. Okay, so with that out of the way, if you have any questions, feel free to jump in. The output for urban design, I'm sure it was discussed in your previous classes. Usually city level policy making, city or municipal level policy making, development of public space. I'm talking about like plazas, streets, and sort of waterways. There's a lot of waterways in the Philippines because of our archipelago, our geography. And then the development of residential subdivisions, both private and public. This is included in the sort of the legal definition of what an urban planner is in the Philippines. Here we're called environmental planners. So I'm sure you already know that. So this is a handy diagram from the urban design group from UK as to what kind of outputs urban designers and on a larger scale, urban planners create. So we have like on the upper left, indicative or visionary meaning a conceptual plan. So this is where town planning and economic development plans are made. And then more specific, more regulated, we have highway design, street design. So this is more on the public realm, as you can see. The x-axis is, if you go to the left, it's more development, more large scale. And if you go to the right, smaller, more kanang tangible public realm, street scale. And then the bottom over here, more detailed, more kanang smaller scale. That's architecture and like highway design, street design. And up here is the larger city or sub-region wide scale. So you need like landscape architects, economists, and sociologists to like create these kinds of plans. So this is one example of sort of a city scale plan, like a master plan. So you see they've highlighted the green areas, the built up areas, and sort of like institutional spaces, schools, offices, etc. Now, one sort of urban design project I'm familiar with is the Sydney CBD Light Rail project. So CBD stands for Central Business District. So over here on the left, in the 2010s, this stretch of road highlighted in red, called George Street, used to be full of kanang buses and cars, very noisy, very kanang dirty because of the exhaust from cars, and they wanted to install a light rail project. So this is the light rail sort of route. It's about over, I think this is like 2 kilometers, for 3 kilometers, for 5, 6. I think about like almost like 10 kilometers long, and it stretches from sort of the Sydney Opera House all the way to their suburbs down here to the south. And it was completed in 2020. So this is one section of that kanang railway project, stretches from the Sydney Opera House to the Central train station. It's really called Central. And what they wanted to solve with this problem was traffic congestion in the Central Business District. The solution or the proposal was advertised or made public in 2012, backed by the New South Wales government. Basically, that's their kanang regional government. And they decided to build a light rail from Circular Quay, that's here in the north, where the Opera House is, all the way to their suburbs. And this section highlighted here is just like a part of it. It's only 2.4 kilometers or like 2.6 kilometers long. Basically, 1/3 of the total track length of 12 kilometers. And just this part here is already, oh wait, I think this is the total project cost actually. I need to review that. I'm not sure if this is the total or just this section, is already 2.2 billion Australian dollars. So just this like 12-kilometer sort of railway project is 2.2 billion Australian dollars, or 78.7 billion Philippine pesos. So these kinds of projects are very expensive. So we won't be doing projects like that in this class. We'll focus on smaller scale, sort of more realistic kanang projects, like maybe sidewalk development, maybe temporary sort of solutions to what you can do on your like local streets, or maybe even like if you feel like you're up for it, like a subdivision sort of or social housing na project. If you can find a site that you feel like it's kanang good to develop a social housing site, because I've read through your works, some of the proposals or some of the solutions were, of course, like trying to solve the housing problem by providing more affordable housing, fixing the flooding. Flooding is more of a engineering problem. We don't, as architects, and I think most of us here are designers, our backgrounds are more in the built environment and not really engineering. So I can't really help you with that. So we'll focus more on the sort of kanang either street level or kanang subdivision type projects. But anyway, more on the light rail project in Sydney. So this development was part of a larger sort of what do you call this goal proposed in 2008. So they had a sustainable Sydney vision. So it usually starts out with a vision. For public projects, it's done by the government. For private projects, it's done by developers. So they planned this all the way back in 2008. It was implemented in 2012 and got completed in around 2020. So the whole sort of timeline, so that's 2008 to, let me just bring out a calculator. So 16 years, I think, yeah. 2008 divided by 20, minus 2020, sorry. Math. What the? 2008, well, about 12 years. So that's over a decade. That's more than one presidential term. And I think that's really the issue here, because big projects like this don't really happen in the Philippines because whenever we get a new president, it's always like a new project, scrap the old plans, and that's really the main issue. But anyway, going back to this. So over here we have the before, the traditional sort of roadway with like some side with at least like generous sidewalks, and then broken lines are the sort of building frontages. And then included in the railway project was also the planting of several trees along the sidewalks. And then they even proposed a pattern for the road, or like the roadway where the light rails would pass by. So they would have sort of this like gradient to it. And then also details for the street trees are also included in the design proposal. So you can look at the design proposal over here. I have it over here. You can view through it or peruse yourself. Where is our Google Meet here? Okay, we're still at 8 people. I don't know where the rest of the people are. So this is issue.com. You can't download it, so you just need to bookmark it like so. But it's always available. This was published. When was this published? 2013. So it's been here for over 7 years already. So yeah, so you can just come back to here. So if you want to create, or if you have an idea, if you don't have an idea of what we're trying to do, sort of in this class or like as urban designers, this is a good guide. Although we won't go as detailed as this. Something more simpler, maybe one. If it's individual, maybe 1 or 2 pages. If it's group, maybe 10 pages. I still haven't decided. I'll let you guys like talk it out amongst yourselves. Okay. So that's what that looks like. And then it was completed in 2020. Let me just load the video here. I downloaded it so we don't have to go through some ads. So this is what the new sort of George Street section looks like. You can see they rerouted all the cars. The railway infrastructure is already built. And when I was studying there, this was all like construction, all under construction. So you can't see them laying the railway, but you can sort of peek through. They had the fences and everything. And this opened just as I came back to the Philippines. So I didn't get to use it. But it's pretty nice that they have it there now. But with if you have any questions about this, like how it was implemented, etc., please let me know. And then you can review this video on your own. It's called the link is over here. Just put it into our group chat over there. Okay. So they accomplished it in about 14 years, 12, 14 years. And then again, just want to highlight that the city of Sydney is basically the size of Lapu-Lapu or kanang, if you're from Cebu, but if like if you're from the other sort of cities, I could put a size comparison, but since you're all architects, I think you can do it yourselves. Just like it's very kanang obvious na these urban areas are not the same as our urban areas here in the Philippines. So we have much more limited land. And then these kinds of developments, although I think eventually we will have them, we won't have them for a while. Or if we do sort of propose them, it's going to take a lot of planning and a lot of coordination. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, in the Philippines, we don't have urban designers or urban planners. They're just called environmental planners. So environmental planning, according to PD 1308. So this is the presidential decree regulating the practice of environmental planning. Environmental planners refers to, or the planner handles activities concerned with the management and development of land, as well as preservation, conservation, and rehabilitation of the human environment. So the scope of work is, as mentioned before, but this is sort of the legal sort of definition of what an environmental planner is. And then The different sort of regulations that we're familiar with, like in architecture, is we have the BP 220 for housing, socialized housing and economic housing, PD 957 for subdivisions. We also have, on a much larger scale, the updated Philippine Development Plan. So this is more kind of regional and national level. And then we also have the Harmonized National Research and Development Agenda proposed by the Department of Science and Technology. So I know some of you are in the academe, and this is something that can, if you want topics for your thesis, you get it from this book, because like that's what the Philippines is targeting to research. Okay, and then again, the difference between urban planning and urban design is that urban planning is more large scale and it's still kind of this continuous and collaborative process is still present in urban design. It's just that it's at a much larger scale. And for resources, I would just divide them into two, the tangible and intangible resources. So that's the physical resources, geography, infrastructure, and the socio-economic resources, building laws, history, heritage sites, and cultural sites. And the output usually is more kind of regional policy making, zoning maps, and larger scale developments, basically larger than a subdivision, although they can still work with that as well. And I just want to run through the types of Philippine zoning for the non-architects and like sort of those who are not familiar. So there are, let's see, 26 zones. So there's the forest zone, agricultural zone, agri-industrial, municipal waters, mineral land, general residential, etc., etc. Of course, the agricultural zones are all green. The sort of residential zones, or this mineral zone is supposed to be also green, I think. Residential zones are in yellow. Commercial zones, we have 4 levels. We have general, C1, C2, C3. They're all in red. Industrial zones in sort of pink or purple. There's 3 levels of that. Institutionals, there's like 2 levels, general, institutional, and special. And then you have the parks and recreation, cemetery, green belt. These are other sort of green spaces. Utilities and transportation, it has its own category. And then the tourism zone, because that's like one major industry in the Philippines. It gets its own zone. And then one of you mentioned the comprehensive land use plan in your report or your submission assignment, and we will also be discussing this a bit. So in the Philippines, different plans sort of handle different aspects or different types of land. So of course, the forest land use plan focuses on the forest. CLUP in particular tries to look at everything, forest, upland, lowland, and coastal marine in one specific area, usually barangay scale, and sometimes what do you call this? Also kanang city on municipal scale. You have comprehensive development plans, another type of kanang plan as well. I think it's all encompassing. It includes forest, upland, lowland, and coastal marine. And then you have the plans that specifically focus on the coastal and marine environments. That's the Coastal Fishery Resource Management Plan and the Agriculture and Fisheries Modernization Plan. And in the uplands area specifically, you have the Agrarian Reform Community Development Plan. So all your different sort of geography types, because we come from very different areas, we could pattern our proposals on these on these existing standards. And then down here, you have the implementing agency. So in brown, sort of implementing the comprehensive land use plan is the HLURB. DENR handles like these plans in green. And then the DA, I think Department of Agriculture, handles the plans in orange. And the DAR, Department of Agrarian Reform, handles the one plan here in red, and etc., etc. So how does one make a comprehensive land use plan? There's a similar pattern of this like sort of steps in Australia, because that's where I studied. But in the Philippines, we'll just use the Philippine way because we are in the Philippines. So step 1, over here, discuss and prepare or update the CLUP. I think most of the municipalities in the Philippines don't have a CLUP yet. even more so the barangays, and then assess the available resources and prepare the proposal. So we kind of did that with our previous activity, just looking at what's in our local area. Some of you submitted cities, some of you submitted barangays. Either is fine, just so long as you have one. You start out with one area that you're familiar with, and then usually we want to organize a planning team. So yeah, this really is kind of will become more realistic if we separate into teams. We just need to decide, for those who don't live in the same area, we just need to decide which area you're going to be focusing on. So it's gonna something similar to kind of, so you can work on it with like with some knowledge, like you can bring your expertise to the discussion, and then orient the planning team, then inventory available information, then prepare and disseminate the IEC materials. I'm not sure what IEC means. I guess the research materials or something like that. And in practice, or if CLUP does get funded, and I mean like commissioned or started, according to this graph, it takes 18 months. So that's about a year and a half. And you have the different activities here. So approval from the part one is organized, getting approval from the SP or the SP. I'm not sure what those are. Preparation of the work program. I think these are sanggunian something. I'm not sure. I need to review that. And then define stake. Sangguniang Bayan. Thank you. I've been to the Philippines for 3 years now, but I'm still not familiar with the terms. Setting the vision. So this is more your conceptual thing. So this, if your background is in architecture, you're already very good at this. Conducting visioning workshops. So in our class, it'll just be us, but in actual practice, you actually go out to the communities that will be affected and hopefully like get their input as well. Then analyzing the situation. So what do the people there want? What does the government want? And sort of creating a plan that sort of brings everything together. And then you'll have setting goals and objectives, and then finally establishing the thrust and spatial strategies. And then you prepare the land use plan, and then the drawing or draft of the zoning ordinances and other development controls is the 8th step. And then ideally, there's supposed to be a public hearing, but this is also a failing, not just in the Philippines, but even abroad. Public hearings and sort of like public engagement is still very weak, especially if the the project is very flashy, like the light railway. Even that project in Sydney had a lot of kind of controversy because the people affected along the railway line were barely consulted at all. So they had like fill in the survey, blah, 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 and that was it. And then they didn't even get to say, no, we don't want this. And then they just like built it. Okay, and then after the public hearing, you refine the proposal, and then you review, adopt, and then endorse again. Then the cycle repeats again. Okay, so who is in the planning team? So just sort of for our own guide, Bitaw. So we have the planning core group. So we have the development commissions or coordinators. That's the MPDC or the CPDC. It's different sort of per location, whatever the one abbreviation of that coordinating group is. Planning officers, architectural, environmental, or urban planners. You have the DRRMO. I'm sure you know. I'll Google that later, but I didn't review who these guys are. Support groups. So we have writers, mappers, craftsmen, local government officials, legal experts to make sure everything is in order. And then the other work groups, we have social group, economic group, infrastructure, physical, forest, etc. So there's a lot. And there's a lot of kind of data that needs to be processed. We're looking at zoning maps, slope maps, geodetic maps, land cover, etc. It's erosion, landslide. So it's really a very difficult task, both like logistically and just like getting these people together. So in Metro Cebu, we have the roadmap study. Roadmap is just a fancy way of saying like conceptual study of what we want to do in Metro Cebu. So Metro Cebu is not really an actual kind of government unit. It's just the combined efforts of several municipalities and cities in Cebu province that compose Metro Cebu. So that's Carcar City, San Fernando City here, City of Naga, the municipality of Minglanilla, Talisay City, etc. Cebu City, Mandaue City, Consolacion, Liloan, etc. etc. So these areas or these municipalities and cities highlighted here. And then in this roadmap study, they identified the different issues per local government unit. They have septage and sewerage, solid waste management, traffic congestion, water supply, similar to what you identified in your assignments, population increase, public transport, informal settlers, roads, bridges, saltwater intrusion. And I think one report that stood out to me was the one who mentioned that no sort of street lights in their local barangay made it very dark and difficult to move around at night. And then for more information on this, you can like Google or just YouTube Mega Cebu Making Waves. They have several videos discussing what they want to do. Whether they actually get to do it, that's a whole nother thing. But this is sort of a good sort of starting point if you want to initiate a CLUP or some kind of proposal in your local area. So just a bit of history. In Cebu City, Metro Cebu, there was already a plan back in, what do you call this, the 1970s, 1990s even, for a Metro Cebu 2000 structure plan. So they targeted this for the year 2000, but after that, Murag, not much else sort of new structure plans have been built. Just the Metro Cebu roadmap study, which was done in about 2012. The report was published 2015, and this is what they found. Well, excuse me. So they have 4 strategies and visions over here on the lower right. Competitiveness, mobility, livability, basically just buzzwords to make the plan more appealing to the general public. But hopefully these identify actual problems that need to be solved in the local community. So in this document, you would also see how they like finance it, how they identified which areas need need intervention or need some kind of what is the thrust for the plan. So in my classes, I always highlight the importance of studying the population growth. And so in here in the middle, you see the 2010 population distribution of Metro Cebu. So in yellow and red over here, basically these colors represent the number of people or like the density of people in these areas. So yellow meaning dense and red being very dense. And then without any interventions, this pattern would sort of continue. Then all of the people in this area here in Cebu City, Lapu-Lapu City, and Mandaue City would become more and more sort of congested, and their solution is to spread out the population so it doesn't become so congested. People living in a small area would like cause problems with traffic. Whether that's the actual solution or not, I'm still like very much on the fence about it. But the issue here is we start building up. That's going to cost a lot of money, and I'm not sure Cebu, Metro Cebu, or the groups in the Cebu province could actually create those buildings. So maybe a more polycentric, meaning multiple centers spread out development would be ideal. But again, that sort of sounds like just another way of saying urban sprawl. So whether it's the right solution or not, we don't know. It's still, for me, like up to debate. But anyway, in how would they plan to finance this project is they're already working with a Japanese company called JICA. That's the it's an abbreviation for the company name. I forget what is the abbreviation meaning, but it's the foreign investors. Then the Department of Finance will sort of handle those investments and will sort of distribute them to the LGUs, the public-private partnership funds, that's a PPP, and they will slowly sort of what do you call this? Distribute it according to the needs of the Metro Cebu Development Council Board or Bureau or Group. That's the MCDCB. I forget what the B stands for. There's so many acronyms in urban design and urban planning, but that development group then sort of creates those projects, and then they identify how much money they need. And based on how much money there is, that's how they develop the different projects. And how is the Philippines going? I made this presentation back, like, I think a year ago, and to the people of like to students in Iloilo City, not the whole people. It was like a school in Iloilo. So they had bike lanes is the new popular thing. Whether you agree with it or not, most people or like most government officials, and I think a lot of like the private sector as well, like this idea of like bicycles. And for sort of an even more widespread idea of like what is urban design and urban planning um, proposing everywhere in the world. So we have, I would recommend channels in YouTube. So the good thing about the pandemic is like more online creators are producing more stuff. So City Beautiful is about city planning. Stuart Hicks is an architect in Chicago, so he talks more about buildings and also like the history of Chicago, but also like the smaller scale stuff. You have what do you call this? Shows on Netflix about design, and I think there's also a very cool website here called citypopulation.de. I'll send you the link. I'll show you what they do. So citypopulation.de.de. I don't know what the DE is for. It's a free sort of website, and you can go to the Philippines over here. Let's see, Asia. Let's look for the Philippines. I just type Philippines over here. Philippines, and then let's say Antique. There we go. Province, Western Visayas, and we have Antique specifically over here. Let's see, Antique. Oh, there's a whole province of Antique. And who was from Antique? Sorry, yes, which part of Antique are you from?
Uh,
Was it Sibalom?
Sibalom and San Ramon.
Here we go. So we have, I think we have a couple of students in Sibalom. So here you have um, population data, area data, and density data, and even population change or growth. So if you press this button here, sorry, here it shows population on a regional scale. Unfortunately, I don't think we have Kanang Sibalom specifically, but it's more regional. And this is density, and they even have gender over here, something like that. And I think if you're in my QGIS class, you can even create your own map. But the issue is, what do you call this? It's pre-made. The map that we have is from 2015, and I've still yet to figure out how to import CAD data into QGIS. There's a way, but I still haven't figured it out. Okay, but yes, you can use this for your studies. Let me see, putting it here. So let me just check the time. It's 6:51 on our program over here. Uh, we are supposed to sort of go into discussing our submissions from last week. Let me check our attendance here. Who do we have? We got Anacela, Catherine Romero. So we're still missing a few people. That's okay. Hopefully they'll join us next week. So let's bring up your submissions over here. And let me just take note of where people are from. So I have some comments over here. So this is Osame City in just write it down on my, actually let's put it down over here. File new, a new slide. Let's put it here. Osamis. What's the province of Osamis?
Misamis Occidental po.
Occidental, okay.
Yes po.
There we go. So just look at the map. My geography is very bad. Is the thing is the problem with studying in Australia is they only focus on Australian cities. So I'm reorienting myself to Philippine geography again. Okay, so it's down here, south of Western Mindanao-ish. Okay, just put that down over here. I'm gonna take note of the population is 1,400, 140,000. I'll just round it up. 140,000 people. Okay. Okay. Issues are, let's see, they're flooding and let's see. I think flooding is the one that really highlights what we can do. The other ones, the let's see, comprehensive land use plan, some different establishment, unsafe, spaghetti wires, not pedestrian friendly. Okay, so we can write it down like streetscape. Streetscape is something more doable for our class. Flooding is a bit difficult. It's very large scale. I put flooding and streetscape. Possible sort of projects we can do. Okay, next we have Joyce here. Joyce is from, oh yeah, this is the one from Davao. Okay, so I'm really appreciate the maps here. That's why I gave you a high grade because it helps me like visualize where it is. Let's see. So let's Matina Pangi. Oops. Yours is a barangay scale, no?
Yes po, sir.
Okay. Population is 18,000. Let's put here BRGY. 18,000. Let's say 19,000 is 18,900. And the issues are water source, power source. No, here we go. Mode of transportation and road access. Okay, road access is something we can do in urban design. Again, I'll like just summarize it to streetscape. As mentioned earlier, I feel like for a group of 5, we can do sort of one single street and develop that street, like whether it would need more sidewalks, more sort of vehicular parking, or a balance of pedestrian and vehicle service areas. We'll determine that as we go along. Let's see. Assign like submissions from MUD 200. Okay, next we have Gladys, city of Coronadal, sorry. Close this. So if you know any of your other classmates, your information or like contact from them, please let them know that we're officially starting. Coronadal.
taking po yata nila, Miss Gladys.
No?
Taking po nila sa chapter.
Oh yeah, yung isa, di ba? Or lahat ba?
Si Gladys. As for Joanne po, she's sick right now po.
Okay. So yeah, just update them lang. 195. So what we'll do tonight is just create sort of the kind of initial idea. So what we'll be doing for the rest of the sem. Let's see here. Issues, population growth, lack of housing. Okay, housing could be an issue that we could do. Urban sprawl, traffic congestion, vehicle incidents. I think I can still like highlight that as streetscape. Okay. And then over here, Joanne is from barangay profile of it's District 3 Poblacion in Sibalog. Okay. So this will be interesting. Already, I'm thinking about having one group as focusing on one barangay and then another group focusing on a like a city scale. So we can compare like what kinds of solutions we can apply. So let's see, barangay or district three barangay. ERGY. Balo. Okay. The population is 3,000. Okay. 3,000, say 3,700. Issues are, let's see, that's the livestock. Oh, yeah, the market, the commercial area or the market area polluting the neighboring, what was it? Okay. So I asked them like what would be their sort of issue they want to focus on. So the pollution problem here is a bit difficult because I'm assuming the Sibalom livestock market and the slaughterhouse are private properties. We can't really impose on them. That's more of a sort of a policing issue and not really a design issue, like just stop them from polluting in the first place. So pollution is a bit difficult. What else do we have here? Conversion of agricultural lands to commercial lands. So this is like overdevelopment, I guess. So a bit too big, I think the issues here are like it's more kanang they just need to be stopped or controlled. And I think to solve these problems, you need to look at the sort of sibalom at least at the municipal scale, and then sort of create a CLUP that addresses these issues. So maybe the pollution or the waste of the Sibalom livestock market definitely needs to go somewhere else than just like outside the property. So you will need to identify maybe like a landfill or a waste area or like kanang an area to put all the waste and maybe kanang recycle it or kanang compost it or whatever. So para di na siya mo, so they don't have to throw just right outside their kanang building or something like that. And the conversion of agricultural lands to commercial land, that's more of a city scale issue. So they need to identify where is the limit for their development, and I don't think you can do that on the barangay level. And then if you're here, if you have comments on my comments, feel free to join in because this is a discussion. So I'm just right now. I'm just writing down what we have to work with. Okay, so already like I'm thinking, as mentioned before, all the people from Antique should work together and choose one specific problem, and then our problem now is like what do we do with the rest of the class? Okay, I'll open this later. I need to show you something. Let's see, Ubay Bohol. Ubay Bohol. Ubay is a municipality or a city?
Municipality, sir.
Okay. I just need clarification. Bohol, population of 81,000. Let's just say 81,000 people. So I'm sure you realize that the population is important because that will be not only the people affected by our design, but most likely there will also be the people funding the design. Like usually for these sort of projects, they're usually kind of funded by taxes and maybe a private developer. So we can assume there's a private developer who will handle 100% of the cost, or we can sort of a bit more realistic would be a public-private partnership where a portion of the cost will be handled by the kind of taxes in that area. Issues here are, let's see, housing backlog. So housing we can look for a economic or socialized housing site and create that. Uh, and that will solve the sprawling informal settlers. And if there's like more or a designated housing area, maybe that can unlock more public open space in Metro by. But public open space itself is very much a urban design scale project, like a new plaza redevelopment, a new street redevelopment, or renovation or kind of improvement. That's also a thing. So I'll just put that down as streetscape. Okay. So I'm seeing a pattern here, like several people identifying streetscapes. So that's good. So if you're maybe for those who don't live in Antique, we'll just focus on one um, sort of streetscape that addresses or has similar problems to all your different locations. Okay. So we have Omar. I know Omar was a batchmate of mine. I don't know why he has not here. Maybe internet problems or nagsalig siya na batchmate me. Okay. Another Sibalong over here. I'll just write it down for this for records. So Sibalom and Antique issues are, I look at Sibalom's population first. 63,000. And then the issues are flooding. Flooding is too big, but I'll just write it down. Originally, Sawyer Roberts, growing number of students, traffic congestion on sidewalks. I'll still call that streetscape. So maybe that could be a street. That could be a kind of thesis proposal. I think one of you did a proposal of like a street in front of a school for their urban design like thesis.
That's mine too.
Ah, yes, yes. Si Crystal, no? Okay. So maybe we can develop that further if it's still not gonna maybe add more details to that or mas realistic, yeah, like develop it even further. So next we have Crystal over here. So Sandro Mejio, TK. And TK. Population of, where is it? 34,000. And it's important to note that whenever you have an area of growing population, it's even more urgent that we need some master plan or some design interventions in order to ensure that it grows in a sustainable way. So issues here, landslides, installing quality retaining walls, whenever there was a road access. Okay, regulate further construction of residential legal riverside. So yeah, let's put flooding and landslide for now. Okay. Next, let's see. This is Palau and Iligan City. Okay, very different locations. Population of 10,000 people. Should talk. Oh, excuse me. I wrote it down here. Vertical farmer charge. Okay, more construction. Is this a housing issue? I forget. Earth stain. So waterfalls, sidewalks. Okay. Is Catherine here? Ah, okay.
Yes,
Then.
sir. Good evening.
Evening. What's your background, Catherine? Like, what did you study or what are you practicing?
I am an architect, sir.
Ah, okay, architect.
Practitioner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sige, sige. So, muna you're interested in these kind issues. So, there's several here. So I was having a hard time picking one. So for you, what do you think is kanang the most important issue here?
About water. Water
Water,
supply.
water source.
A water
Water
source.
source. Yeah. And okay. What's the second important, most importantly, water source? A very big, kanang uh, sort of like city scale na problem.
Parking.
Okay, so parking. So parking on a streetscape that would be more doable. Parking slash streetscape. Okay. Next. I'm glad you attached the images. Thank you for that. Let's see, Paul. Let's see. Paul is, I think, also from Antique. Yes. So let's see. Specifically, Pang Pang. Okay. Pang si Balum Antique. Population of 716 people. So it's a bit small, so there's not much we can do unless we ask help from like the city or municipal government. So garbage, roads, that like hump could be very doable as an urban design sort of intervention or small scale urban design intervention. So I would identify. So we need a dump site. Usually it should be away from the residential area. So that's more kind of city scale planning. So I would highlight the um, road humps, road hump, or just called road, just road hump, and then put there streetscape. Okay, no street lights. That's a street level problem, and weak supply of water. Again, that's like a bit too large for our class, urban design class. We'll need like a few engineers to solve that. Okay, so let me go back here, full screen. Let me change this to number. Where's number? That's 6. So this is 7, 8, and 9. We're missing, I think, 2 people. Let's see, 11, yeah. So 2 people missing. So let's see. I think the others are, as mentioned earlier, attending a ceremony. So okay. So I'll highlight those in Antique. Maybe I'll just reduce the font size. There we go. So for those in Antique, how many are you here who are present?
Please, sir.
Erase hand lang para makita na ko sa group. Let's see. So we got 3. Okay. Sige, that's good. So among yourselves, decide on kanang which barangay or which, or if you want, you can do like a city scale thing, like the whole of Sibalom. With what kind of area do you want to like focus on? I would suggest something like streetscape level, like a specific street na you notice a lot of problems like traffic or parking or congested, and then we can study that street. And then for the rest who are not from Antique, um, let's see, what do we do? What do we do? All from some very different areas. Let's see. So common problem is like streetscape. Matinapangi, City of Asamis, South Cotabato Occidental. Let's see. Out of like so can you see Osamis, Davao City, Coronadal, Ubay, and Palau. Palau. How familiar are you with your kanang local area? Like, have you been living there for over 10 years? Uh, we'll start with the person from Osamis. How long have you been in Osamis?
I think more than 10 years po, sir.
More than 10 years? Okay,
Yes po.
okay. Would you say that you're very familiar now with the area? Like, you've seen the changes like in that area?
Yes, sir. Somehow.
Okay, so okay. Can you sort of identify a kanang single street na you think would be good for an urban design sort of intervention?
I think in front of the ano sir, uh the public mall, the public
What's the
market,
name of the public market?
Ozami's public mall.
Okay, public. Here we go.
I think yeah,
Kana. There we go. Okay, we
that
can actually do the street around it. So let's see. There are so many different locations, Manggod, and I want to see more because it's good for me as a kanang urban designer as well to see more places in the Philippines because I've been like uh, very out of touch now. Okay, so already you can see some issues here, like this puddling here could be improved. Um, Very lively niche and area, so this might be interesting.
yes.
Uh, I'm really struggling. The problem if I group you and you're not sort of familiar with each other will just make the output weaker. So to the people from Antique, and just like in the class in general, okay ra ba po that the people from Antique will work as one, hmm, or is it a bit unfair? Maybe we can each focus on a single street. Para we'll do like street design and like everyone will be doing street design and we can sort of get principles from abroad and contextualize them so we can apply it to our local area. I think that will be the most fair way. Everyone will be working on a single street. So I wanted sana na different problems, but I think it's a lot more conducive. We focus on one problem and then we'll see how applicable these solutions are. Okay. How do you guys feel about that? Good, Ramo, or do you want to still work in groups?
Okay lang individual, sir.
Okay, individual. Okay, okay. So we'll do it smaller scale, but it's an individual. Okay. Sige. Anyone to second the motion? Okay, let me load something up here. Layer. Embed, add layer, add vector layer. Database. Yes, go ahead. Sorry, please use your microphone. I'm copying a file. I heard someone raise their hand or comment. If you can read the comments, I'm gonna open this thing. Oops. Okay. Because the previous teacher who was handling QGIS gave me this map. Basically, it shows you the different barangays. The issue is it's kanang 2015, so it's old. But with this, you can easily create like your visualizations, drawings, maps, or you can just use AutoCAD as well if you prefer. And then let me just show you what these maps have. So they have the name of the different barangays, and I think they also have areas, if I'm not mistaken. Wala, it's just the name, but we can add the areas later on. But since we're doing street level, I don't think we need this. But if you want data like this, you can just tell me and I'll give this to you. QGIS is also free for those who were not in my QGIS class. You can just install it into your computer. It's not very heavy, and you can create some very good looking maps, and it'll be good for your analysis and maybe like your thesis if you need it. Okay, I just wanted to show that. Okay, discard. Let's see, I think there was a comment somewhere. As group kami dito sa Antique. Okay, is everyone else fine with the people from Antique doing a group report?
Okay lang, sir.
Okay lang, okay, sige. Okay. You might think it's unfair or something. But yeah, much better if more people from Antique focus on a specific area so they can bring together all their expertise. And it's good for us because we can see how they apply their expertise. One thing that I sort of forgot to mention in my lecture is that urban design interventions are very much reliant on like culture and the behavior of the people in that area. So we can't just copy paste solutions from abroad. We have to contextualize them. So that's why when I was taught in Sydney, they just gave me examples in Australia. So they couldn't sort of teach me like how to do it in the Philippines because they weren't from the Philippines. So we'll try to sort of adjust the principles and policies abroad so that it fits what happens in our local area. And I think because we're a smaller class, we start with like small scale projects. Okay, so let me check my schedule over here. So that's how we'll do it. We'll have the people not from Antique individual and the people from Antique as a group. Okay. Now, next on the agenda is going through the sustainability module. So I'm sure everyone is very much familiar with the idea of sustainability. Basically, we manage our resources such that we don't run out and we make it sort of sustainable. That's the word. It doesn't run out. It's like continuously maintained. And that's the goal of that. So let me go share my screen here. There are some quizzes you can do. You don't have to do them tonight. I'll be flexible with that. You just need to do them before next week, and then it's automatically. Maybe I'll have it. So I have time to check because they're all essay questions. Let's see over here. Maybe by like Wednesday-ish. So the sustainability module here is just basically taking what we learned from our discussion on systems and applying them to like the different aspects of urban planning and design. So I divided it into the physical system, the economic system, and the social system. I made this last year. These days, I feel like I just want to combine the socio-economic system into one because they're so like interlinked, and just simplifying it would like help the analysis part of your like proposals a lot better. So what am I talking about here? So again, sustainable development is the idea of meeting the needs of urban growth today while simultaneously preparing for the needs of the future. I recorded a lecture here. I think it's one of my more decent recordings. It's a bit long it's short. It's 8 minutes. Great. So you get the information right away. So you already identified your different areas. Just by the end of this session, I would like to know what area you're going to study. I'll make a submission box for that. So in your streets, you identify a single street. Even 5 people, one street is good enough because we will be looking at like basically your proposal will become more detailed. Maybe you can add trees if it's possible, PWD ramps, thinking about how that street connects with other streets in the local area. So that basically fits into the physical system. So you analyze the geography of that area, that barangay, of that street, climate, we all have the same climate, that's tropical. And then the systems here are, let me just zoom in a bit. It's not letting me zoom in. Save images. Okay. So the systems in sort of a single street, you're looking at sewage system. So what's underneath the streets? Is it like functioning properly? We're not engineers, so we can just say we need that fixed. So we don't need to design the actual solution. We just need to highlight that. Basically, our goal in the physical system is to use less raw materials. And if possible, our new proposals will be creating new energy, new materials for that area. For example, if it's a housing project, the economic housing and socialized housing could be designed with kind of rainwater catchments, and like what's new or like emerging today is more available or more affordable solar panels. So the new housing area could not only generate new water, but also new electricity. From sidewalk or like street design, I think our sort of new raw materials created would probably be a bit limited. I can't think of anything that can be gained from a new sidewalk. It's just better access And usually better accessibility, meaning people can move in and out better, usually leads to more buying and selling, so more economic activity. So that's what's new, or the benefit of creating a better sort of street network or sidewalk. And next, in the economic system, we can sort of, because we already have a background in architecture, I think most of us are in the built environment, we can very easily estimate how much like a strip of road or a sidewalk would cost. I think we can just like Google that or just ask around, ask from like the people that I know who have worked on kind of uh, what do you call this, kind of infrastructure projects. So we can say that our funding is from a PPP, a private-public partnership, just so we can focus more on the design and the solutions. So in my experience, it's better to go big with the designs and then slowly strip things away according to the needs or the budget of whoever the client is, whether it's a local barangay, a local group, or whoever, like the developer. So again, very simply, economic system, just reduce costs, generate income if possible. And this idea of reducing costs and generate income basically is so much connected to the public needs, because again, who's paying for it usually for these like public spaces? It's the general public through taxes. And how do we sort of create more sort of budget efficient or budget friendly design? We need to look at the behavior, the governance of that local area, and how do we uh, sort of maintain or empower the people in that side. So lately, these years, I think one thing I would amend is just combine the socioeconomic factors into one system. So there's like less things to write about because they're very like connected anyway. Okay, so you go through this, just read through it, and then the assignment here is just essay. So just something to help you get into the right state of mind. Like, what is the goal of analyzing the physical system? To just say, like, very simply based on our discussion, what is the benefit of systems thinking? I think we already discussed that at length last time. So this is just me checking if we're on the same page, like if we understand if we're all like in an understanding. And then the second module here is sustainable urban planning process. So similar to what you saw in the CLUP presentation, we have identifying the stakeholders. I just simplified everything about the site into identifying the site issues. And then the vision making is just the last step over here. The objectives are based on the issues. And then once you have the problems and the solutions or objectives together, then you can make a design. So similar to the architectural design process. And the quiz over here, I'll just show you the questions. What are the activities included in the social system of a site? This is kind of like connected to the previous one. And this one is an opinion. I wrote this a year ago, so sometimes I forget. What are some factors you think are important to the planning process that haven't been addressed? So what I've noticed, like there's so many different ways and like issues and problems in the Philippines. It's much better for me to like really ask students, what do you think should be done? Because even back in Australia, they always say that you always include as many people as you can in the design process. Although it becomes more difficult logistically, you end up with a better, more kind of holistic design. And then some sort of studies or new developments in sustainability. You have the circles of sustainability, which was discussed or published or released in 2015. And the latest one is the SDGs. I think we mentioned this last sem. The UN created this list of things that you can, a city or a community can do. They're very lofty ideas, sometimes if you think even too lofty or too big. But it's a good sort of benchmark to find out what we want to do in our local communities. But I think it's already very clear what we want. In the Philippines, we are very much fighting flooding. And at the same time, we also lack drinking water. We have a lot of infrastructure problems. Everything is congested. And that really leads back to just like we haven't figured out how to efficiently manage our land. So there's an area that's super rich. There's an area that's super poor. So it's also an equity and political issue. But let's just start with something small in this class, just the street and the different sort of factors that go into kanang street design. Okay, so that will probably be our sort of long-term goal. So I'll make a module here just to list down your area and then send me images of your street. Where is it? Where's the address? How long is the street? What are the issues of that street? And then we'll discuss it further in terms of sustainability next week. After that, I think our next issue will be, let's see, let me go back to my previous slide over here. Where is it? MUD 200. Let me see. That's not it. After sustainability, we'll be talking about, okay, urban infrastructure. Okay, it's over here. This one. So next week, we'll be discussing infrastructure. So timing, we'll be talking about streets, and then we'll be looking at growth patterns. And this will help us sort of figure out kanang, where does the street fit in sort of the municipal or city scale area. And it will help us sort of guide what kinds of implementations we'll be doing on that specific street. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. Let me review here. So this will be our sort of, how much time do we have until midterm? Or we can do like initial proposal on the midterm and then revised proposal in the finals. Let's see, AY 22. Let's see. So I don't think we'll have a kanang, what do you call this? A quiz for pre-midterms. Our midterm proposal, our midterm exam will be the design proposal for the street. And that is due October. So we have about a month. That's October 17 to 22. So we'll probably submit it on the 22. I'll check it. Then we can review on the 29th. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so next week we'll be talking about infrastructure. That's 17. And then 24, we can, I think also in the 17, we can sort of discuss the different issues and problems of that specific street. And 24, we can talk about possible solutions based on our discussions. And then let's see here. We can maybe spend the next 2 weeks like developing the presentation, like the drawings, etc. And then we can present it by the 22nd. So we'll use the time for like creating those proposals. And I think we can also add in some more discussions on, let me see here. After infrastructure, we'll be discussing disaster risk management. This doesn't really fit the street, but I think we can sort of talk about this on the city scale and how it will impact our specific street. And heritage conservation, I did that last because it's kind of like removed from most urban planning issues. It's very specific in like heritage sites. It's depending on your local area. You might have a lot or you might have none. So we'll just save that for last. And then governance and financing. I think we already discussed a bit of that today, but like anything we missed, we can discuss further towards the end. And then we can revise our sort of proposals with keeping in mind these topics like disaster risk management, heritage conservation, if any, and then financing, if applicable. Okay, so let me just make a module over here. Where do I put this? I think I'll put it in between sustainability and infrastructure. Make a new module, let's say course project, or the project for the whole course. We'll call it streetscape or street design. Okay. Where did it go? Let's put it up here. after here. Okay. So I'll just put here an assignment. We'll call it oh, selecting your project site. Okay. And all I need to do is, I need the assignment for this. Yeah. Put it at 30 points. Submit images of your site and why you chose that site. Basically, what made you choose that site. We can sort of have this due for next meeting, 6 p.m. Okay. So select a street that you think will need an urban design proposal. Okay. 3 points. Okay. Save and publish. Oops. File upload. You can upload anything. Images, PowerPoint, PDF. It's fine with me. Okay. I'll just put a note here. Antique group only need to submit one. On site, but you can share and what do you call this? Just write down the names of your group members so we can add the grade. Just include the names of your group members. Okay. Okay. Sige. Modules. Publish na siya. This quiz, I'll have this due on Wednesday. I think you can answer it now if you want. Let's see. 2022. Supposed to be 17. I have it on 21, 10 p.m. Sorry, I didn't update the submission date from last sem. And the sample city profiles. Oh, wait, no, that was the old one. Oh, sorry, I was in the wrong module. Edit. Okay, go back here. Supposed to update this quiz here. Edit. There's no time limit. You can just like answer freely. This will be 21, 10 p.m. Done. Okay. Any questions so far? I think the questions will be coming in once we actually get started on a urban design project. Okay. Let's see. Wednesday, 10 p.m. Okay. Sige. So the rest of the session will be asynchronous. You can continue working on it or you can continue working on it tomorrow. It's a very straightforward module. All you need to do is watch the video, read the text, and then answer the quiz. And I think that will put you in the right mindset to kind of select your site. Let's see. When did yeah, selecting the site will be 24. So you have until Saturday to select your site. Next Saturday, I mean, and then we'll sort of discuss the different attributes of your site based on like our sustainability criteria, and then we'll talk about infrastructure. What are the different elements of infrastructure and how we can sort of improve infrastructure, what's going on abroad, and what's going on in the Philippines. Okay. Any questions so far? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We got lesser people now. No questions? Anna, any questions about the topics, about the assignments? I'll stop recording here.